Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is strength and vulnerability. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to settle in and just get present. Let's just take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine all that oxygen coursing through your blood and through your cells and into your muscles and throughout all of you and enlivening you. And as you exhale, exhale any tension in your neck, in your jaw, in your shoulders. Let's take another deep breath in through your nose. Hold it and imagine that it's bright, brilliant, sparkling light just coursing through your being on every level in every dimension and radiating out beyond you. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining stress or tension. And then let's gently place our palms together. Softly rub your fingers against your palms so that you feel the tickling in your fingers and the tickling in your palms. And just enjoy that physical sensation and the deliciousness of it. And welcome. I'm glad to have you here with me today. And we're talking today about strength and vulnerability. So when we think of strength, the first thing that, like the traditional notion of strength, is one that's sort of oppositional. Like I'm going to brace myself, I'm going to be strong in the face of this, I'm going to steel myself and rally my defenses. And good morning, Dido, and good morning to everyone else who's joined us. We're talking about strength and vulnerability and how traditionally we think of strength as something that is solid and impenetrable and steeling yourself, like just becoming solid, becoming impenetrable, becoming uh, unassailable and rigid in a certain way. And I'm wanting to talk about vulnerability as the ultimate strength. Uh, Hello, Linda Willis Tolstrup. I'm so glad to see you here. I don't know if I said your name right. I'm sorry for your last name there, but it's wonderful to have you. I'm so glad you're here. And we're talking about strength and vulnerability. So when we feel strong within ourselves, when we feel whole and complete within ourselves, we have the ability to be able to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And when I speak of vulnerability, again, this is something where we might want to be questioning our traditional notion of what vulnerability is. Usually, when we think about vulnerability, it means being vulnerable to attack, being vulnerable to harm. In other words, not defended, not protected, not safe, because we're vulnerable. And we want to shore up all our places of vulnerability. Again, this is the same sort of notion as the strength being unassailable, strength being impenetrable. And I want to invite you to look at the strength that it takes to allow yourself to be vulnerable to another, to be speaking your truth, to be opening your heart, to be willing to connect. This is a level of strength and courage that that has the potential to elevate us to another way of being in the world. Good morning, Kim. Welcome. So glad to have you here joining us today. And you guys that are here and engaged with us, how about if you uh, put in the chat what strength is to you, and what vulnerability is to you, so we can generate more of a conversation here. Because I think that the ultimate strength comes from being whole in yourself. And from that wholeness, we then have the ability to make ourselves available to others, to be really truly present with others, to be engaged from a heart centered place. And that's the ultimate strength. Um, Dido shares, Brene Brown talks a lot about how many of us tend to equate vulnerability with weakness. Exactly. Vulnerability actually takes courage and takes strength and takes a sense of presence to be able to be real with someone else and engage on a level of heartfelt truth. And I think that we are so often wrapped up in protecting ourselves from others that we neglect building our inner our inner fortitude. It doesn't mean denial, it means more presence. It doesn't mean closing off, it means opening up your heart, opening up your presence. And Kim, thank you so much for sharing what you believe strength to be. So Kim says, strength is believing in yourself. I'd say vulnerability is also being willing to be open hearted. Thank you for that, Kim. And anybody else who's here to listening and engaged, please share what you consider strength and vulnerability to be. Uh, Being open hearted takes courage and it takes strength. And to your point, Kim, when you say strength is believing in yourself, it is. It's like when you have this sense of wholeness, there is an innate strength that emerges or emanates from that that you don't have to assert. It just is. It's a sense of presence and strength in that presence. And Linda, thank you so much for sharing as well. Linda says, I sometimes feel if I'm vulnerable, I'm weak, but I've found it's a strength that a lot of us won't let ourselves be vulnerable. Yes, so exactly, Linda. Vulnerability, like I think what we need to do again is twist around the way that we're commonly conditioned to think about strength and vulnerability. You know, in our culture, traditionally, if you're vulnerable, that's a weakness. If your vulnerability is an area of weakness, but that's not true. That's coming from a vantage point of self and other. In other words, opposition, danger, enemy. So we have to shore up our vulnerabilities so that we're invulnerable, we're impenetrable. And in truth, what that whole way of interacting with this question is one that is coming from fear, right? So if you want to share uh, something about fear and vulnerability and how maybe you've come overcome the fear of being vulnerable, and maybe you could share something about how enriching it is to open your heart and what's available to you from being able to do that. Ladies, it would be awesome if you want to engage with this. I'd love to have more of this conversation with you. So, uh, as we move from a paradigm of separation, self and other, and move into a paradigm of oneness and connection, that's where vulnerability becomes a tremendous strength rather than a weakness, where actually allowing others to see who we are out of our wholeness and out of our inner strength, then we get to create much more authentic relationships. Maybe you could share a, a place where you've had an experience where you opened your heart and you realized that it just transformed you and the relationship with the other person by sharing vulnerably with somebody, the level of connection that might be created. It's so much richer. Linda, thank you for sharing. She says strength comes after you go through tough times and you absolutely find out that you're strong. This gives you strength, power, and helps you to want more greatness and joy in life. I love that, Linda. It's true. It's really, really true that strength, the inner integrity, I'm going to call it inner integrity. And what I mean by the word integrity is integration. When we're truly integrated inside, and that comes through surviving and moving through difficult times, rising to those times, finding our inner capability to rise to the requirements of the circumstances of life, gives us more confidence in our resilience, and it gives us inner strength, that knowing. Hello, Hope Wellington Marshall. Good afternoon to you. And Dido says, I found it to be a lot easier to be vulnerable once I realized that I'm a highly sensitive person, and that brings its own gifts. I don't have to change myself. Wow, that's awesome, Dido. And actually, I think that you bring up such a powerful point here. Hope, we're talking about strength and vulnerability, and how it actually takes strength to allow yourself to be vulnerable, and and in being vulnerable, we get to connect more deeply with others. So, Dido, you're speaking about highly sensitive people. My guess is that many, many, many of us here on Enlightened World Network and that are drawn to this kind of conversation are highly sensitive people. And as highly sensitive people, what does that mean? It means perhaps that our we have, in addition to our five senses, we have other very, very developed senses that enable us to respond to and interpret the world outside of us. And it also makes us very vulnerable to the information that we're receiving as highly sensitive people. And when we recognize that our sensitivity in our culture, so many of us who are sensitive people have been made to feel weak and less than because we are so sensitive. And the truth is that we're just much more in tune with what's happening in the world. We're much more aware. We have a acute awareness of what is happening around us and with other people. And it without the inner strength and inner acceptance and appreciation for those gifts, we can be subject to our cultural indoctrination that says being emotional is weakness. Well, in fact, it's another sense. It's another superpower, actually. And when we are able to use it, any superpower could be used for good or for ill. So we want to be able to use it for good. And so that sensitivity actually can be a source of great strength when we sort of put the cultural predilections and predispositions and prejudices, when we flip them on their head and become more present to the richness of our perceptions and our insights and our in tuneness with the world. So Kim says, I think I've started to lose the fear of being vulnerable once I learned that nothing can separate me from God's love. That's beautiful, Kim. I think you also bring up a really powerful point that we can lose our fear when we gain trust in the universe, when we presence ourselves to trust in God or our higher self or the universe, when we trust in the process of life, then we can allow ourselves to be vulnerable without the fear of life itself. So that's beautiful, Kim. Thank you. And Sharon, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really glad you're here. Hope that you'll engage with us here. We're talking about fear. We're talking about strength and vulnerability and kind of reworking those standard cultural definitions around strength and vulnerability. And Linda says once you have that inner vulnerability and strength, it brings more and more love and beauty in your life. It just does and is. And nobody could have said that better, Linda. It's really, really true that when you recognize your inner strength, when you allow yourself to accept who you are, your inner strength emerges from that inner alignment and from connecting to the richness of who you are as you allow yourself to accept yourself and to love yourself more deeply. A natural strength and, again, integrity, integration emerges, and then you have a greater ability to be truly vulnerable and to express the strength of who you are in that vulnerability, in that willingness to open your heart to receive actual true communication with others and to exchange from heart to heart. So this is great. Now let's look at how do we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. So I think that especially as highly sensitive people, and I'm going to guess that again, a number of us who are engaged in these conversations are highly sensitive people. We have a really, really super powerfully advanced GPS inside, and that is our gut feelings. As people that are so readily attuned to emotional nuance and environmental nuance, we have a really valuable so GPS is the best way I can say it. So we know when it's appropriate to trust someone or not trust someone. And the other thing we want to look at when we talk about trust is, what is it that we're trusting when we trust someone? So are we trusting someone not to hurt us? Are we trusting someone not to be angry? Are we trusting someone to listen to us? Or what are we trusting someone to do or not to do? And the point that I'm trying to get to is that when we trust our inner GPS, we know when it's appropriate to make ourselves vulnerable and when it isn't appropriate to make ourselves vulnerable, when we really tune in. And that moves beyond fear. It just becomes more of a guidance mechanism. So, for instance, if I am interacting with a dog, there are some dogs that I can sense they're friendly. They're friendly, safe dogs. There are other dogs when I feel into the connection with that animal that I know it's not safe. Or you could even just be observing. You might have really obvious clues that this is not safe. And so those places where you get that message that this is not safe, that's probably a really good place not to make yourself vulnerable in that circumstance. So we don't want to be randomly, haphazardly, mindlessly vulnerable, because that's like walking around like a an invitation for disaster. There are situations that require caution, and at least at least uh, that's my imagining at this moment. And the situations that are going to require caution are very much dependent upon our own personal evolution, because there may be a place where we are so completely enlightened that we don't have to, there is no issue of safety anywhere in any way. I'm not there yet. And given that I'm not there yet, there are situations where I use my inner GPS to say yes to this situation, no to that situation. And I encourage you to be cultivating that awareness in yourself. And so let's get back to some comments. So Linda says it's okay to be vulnerable and open and open your heart to love and beauty. First, you have to work through those negative thoughts and feelings, because only positive thoughts and feelings will bring your heart joy and beautiful strength and love. And you're talking about doing the work, Linda. So absolutely 100%. We get to do the work. We get to evolve and release the things that have held us bound. And this is actually a really interesting thought. Like we sometimes feel oppressed by our past, and our fears and our ideas and our beliefs can be really oppressive, because we often carry limiting beliefs that we then cling to as if they're truth. And as we allow ourselves to release these ideas and not maintain such a an attachment to them, then we have the ability to move more freely and kind of allow life to flow through us, allow experience to flow through us, rather than trying to grab onto life. And in the grabbing, what happens is you can only hold so much in your hands, right? So if you're able, instead of trying to hold on, if you're able to allow yourself to open your hands and allow life to flow through, there's so much more vast capacity for experience. And then, so Linda says, when you have that inner strength, you're able to tune into what's good for you and your heart. Exactly. And and I was talking about how to use your inner GPS to be able to know how to navigate situations. And Linda says, yeah, when you see one of those situations that's a no, you just get away fast if you feel caution. You don't have to run away. You just go to the next place. And being okay. So Linda brings up another really good point, and that is being an empath. It's hard to turn people away. So let's talk about being empaths, because so many of us, the highly sensitive people, that's what we are. We're empathic. And what that means is we often receive stuff from the external environment that we don't even know that isn't ours or is coming from outside of ourselves. I know when I was growing up, I lived in a pretty toxic family environment, seriously toxic. And I was so depressed and angry uh, all the time. And it took me years of having been out of that environment to realize that so much of what I was feeling wasn't mine. I never really had the concept that I was sort of being a sponge for other people's emotion and other people's experience. And so as empaths, it's even more critically important to shore up ourselves, to create that wholeness and that integrated center, because when we have that, we're not as vulnerable in the traditional way. We're not. How about we're not as at the effect of what is happening emotionally around us. In other words, our field, if our field is integrated and whole, it doesn't leave the holes that could be subject to other people's feelings and emotions and turmoil. So I think with people that are empathic, one of the things that I've noticed in a lot of the healer people that I've worked with and in myself is that uh, we often go through a time of wanting to save the world, to help everyone, and to feel everyone else's pain. And the thing that is really has made a difference for me, and that I encourage in others who are deeply empathic, is to recognize that your suffering in no way helps anyone else. And in fact, I think it was yesterday I talked about suffering, but your suffering only hurts you. And it doesn't help the people that you're trying to help. So I believe that as we, and this is my experience for myself, as I have been able to create a more integrated field for myself, as I find myself more centered and balanced, I don't have I don't automatically reach out and act as a sponge for everything around me. It's when I'm feeling less integrated, when I'm feeling less aligned, that I am more subject to external influences that I'm unaware of. So as an empath, I think the greatest skill that we can cultivate is the enrichment and filling out of our own energetic field. And when we have that complete wholeness, when we have that integrated field, then we get to choose where to extend our hearts, where to extend our gifts, rather than to be a constant sponge. And Linda, you being an empath, and anybody else listening who's empathic, maybe you could share what you have found to be really helpful in creating this internal wholeness, this internal integration and strength that helps you in the world that you're navigating. Maybe what I've found is doing a chakra alignment can be really, really powerfully helpful. So just imagining light coming in through my head and in the third eye and into the throat and moving down into the heart and into the solar plexus and then the sacral and then the root chakras, and seeing that light coming through and then just bringing it back around and circulating it around and around, it helps to create balance and integration for me, and it may be something that's helpful for you. And Linda says, let's see, we sometimes feel it's our business to feel others' pain, but it's not ours to take or absorb. It's that person's journey. Exactly. And the truth is that those of us who are empathic have experienced lots and lots of pain of our own. And we know that that's what has brought us to the place that we are, where we're able to connect and know the depth of emotional experience for others as well. And it's also been a tremendous sense of, or source of strength for us. And Sharon says, being vulnerable with grace lets you uncover your true self, the good, bad, and the ugly. And then as you practice the gift of vulnerability, you can embrace that all parts of you are magnificent, and all those same parts of everyone else are as appropriate and beautiful too, and peace and joy abound. Sharon, that's so poetic and so true and so beautiful. You covered a lot of ground in that. So, first, being vulnerable with grace. That's a big deal. So, being vulnerable with grace, there's the way that I'm seeing that. I actually have a visual in my head of, graceful movement, like the movement of dance. There's an elegance to being present without victimhood. To be vulnerable and not be a victim. In other words, to open your heart as a conscious and deliberate act, rather than to be an invitation for wounding. And I think there's a real difference to open your heart from strength versus to just be to be I don't have the words to express it. How about that? But I think that opening your heart from strength and wholeness is where we want to be moving from, rather than opening your heart from desperation. That's what I was trying to get to. And so the vulnerability to uncover our true selves, the good, bad, and the ugly, and then to embrace all parts of ourselves. And this is such a key, Sharon, you and your wisdom. It's beautiful, but this is such a key, is to be able to find the love and acceptance for all aspects of ourselves, because every aspect of ourselves has brought us to this moment, in this place in our lives. And all aspects, the good, bad, and the ugly, those are just judgments that we're placing upon ourselves. And light and shadow coexist, and one cannot exist without the other. And it is moving through our shadow that brings us to the brightest expression of our light. So, and that's exactly what Sharon is saying. All those parts of everyone else are as appropriate and beautiful too, and peace and joy abound. And Kim says, wow, that's a great reminder to stay aligned, to not allow outside influences to take advantage of us, but rather allow us to choose when to extend ourselves. I married two men and tried to save them. It didn't work. And Kim, you know what? I really believe, this is from my own experience, that trying to save others comes from the dream or fantasy of having someone come and save us. And so in trying to save others, what we're doing is trying to save ourselves. And we would probably be better suited to be addressing ourselves and our own wounds than to try to save others. That was something that I spent quite a lot of my lifetime trying to do, and seeing the beauty in someone, seeing the diamond in someone who was seriously beyond a diamond in the rough when they couldn't see it in themselves. So trying to save others is a recipe for disaster, in my experience. The people that you want to support and work with are people that are ready to do the work. And yeah. So Linda says self care is absolutely crucial. Meditation, going within, finding our inner beauty and true self, trusting in what we know is our truth. I agree, Linda. And finding our own truth can be quite the journey because it often means, well, it always means letting go of the things that obscure that truth. And I think it can be a lifelong journey, you know, this unfoldment, this evolution of ourselves as we as we let go of more and more. That's what I'm finding, and it's crazy and counterintuitive that the more I let go of the ideas of who I am and the judgments about who I am and the beliefs that I hold, the more I let go of these things and take them on as at the best hypotheses rather than truth, then I find I get more and more connected to myself, that I get more and more connected to the authentic expression of my soul. And Kim says yes, that she wanted to be saved, and I wanted to be saved too, Kim, for a good portion of my life until I realized that I got to show up as my own hero eventually, and that's what we all get to do. Linda says, being an empath, we're always trying to save others because it makes us feel better, but then we get hurt in the end sometimes because others can't fulfill us. Right, Linda. And really, the idea is saving. First of all, saving others. You're saying the reason that we save others is because it makes us feel better, and I totally get what you're saying. And the truth is that we need to find our own path to fulfillment, right? We can't, others can't fulfill us. That's exactly true. And when I have encountered so many people who are deeply, profoundly committed to their suffering, deeply, profoundly committed to their own misery, and the trying to save them is, it's, you might as well just bang your head against the wall, and it's, there's no reward there, and you're not serving them because that's not what their commitment is. Their commitment is not to improve, at least in that moment in time. And so it's actually kind of an ego driven thing to try to save somebody that doesn't want to be saved. And so what I've learned is I work with people that are ready and excited and willing to do the work and have the courage to show up and really value the opportunity to go deep and transform and get to the next place. And as empaths, that's the greatest gift that we can give ourselves and others, is to put our attention where we can make the most difference. You know, where people are really hungry for what we can offer, and not the people that don't that aren't ready for it and that don't have the appreciation for it, because what that's doing is actually helping to perpetuate our own sense of lack of self-worth and lack of value, and it's a way that we are not actually showing up in the fullest capacity that we have to make a difference in the world. You know, it's still us working through our own weakness. And so allow yourself the gift of knowing you're whole and knowing that you get to work with the people that are ready, willing, and able to make transformative change in their lives. And that way you'll be operating at a higher frequency, you'll be attracting higher frequency people, you'll be having a richer sense of fulfillment. And yeah, so that's just some words from my experience is we don't have to save the world. First, let's care for ourselves, enrich and make ourselves whole. And as we become whole, we're better able to serve. And we want to serve people who we enjoy playing with, that we can elevate, that elevate us. That's that's um, that's where I come from. Is let's share inspiration together. And for folks that are not ready to change, I graciously respect their choice not to change. And when they're ready, when they're ready to grow, when they're ready, if there's something that is in my lexicon to offer, then those are the people that I am called to work with. So you don't have to beat yourself up. You don't have to martyr yourself. In fact, don't. If I'm going to give direct advice, don't martyr yourself. Don't make yourself the victim. It's not serving your mission. It's not serving the person that you're martyring yourself for. And yeah, so that's where that strength, the integration, the wholeness comes in. You when as you allow yourself greater wholeness, then you allow yourself to to choose how you serve, to choose joy, to choose fulfillment. So let's see what else we see here. Sharon, thank you so much for being with us. I see that you have to go. I was really delighted that you showed up here, and I'm so excited. Sharon is going to be launching a podcast, and as that develops and as I learn more, I'll share more about it. So I just want to grab a couple more comments here, and then I've got to go as well. Let's see. Linda says, I'm finding that if I'm around someone or in a situation that I feel drained, then I need to step back and see if I want to put my energy and vulnerability and strength into that person or situation. Linda, that's a beautiful and important way to use your sensitivity as an empath, is to recognize, to calibrate. Like if you're working with somebody and you get drained, you definitely need to be looking at, first of all, how you're interacting with them. One of the things that I used to do before I learned differently is I used to think that the energy that I was using, I would use my own energy, and in healing work, etc. And really, what we want to do is we want to be a channel for the energy. So if you're doing hand healing or energetic healing or even whatever, you want to be channeling the energy of the universe rather than trying to use your own energy, because that depletes, and it also creates a vacuum that you could then be taking on stuff from the people that you work with. So if you're drained, you want to look at it, or you're using your own energy, or is the frequency match between you and whoever this person is that you're working with just not the greatest energetic match for you? And realize that you do not have to suffer to serve. So that was a revelation for me. You do not have to suffer to serve. In fact, if we go where our passions are, that's where we're going to provide the best service. So I want to say thank you, everybody, everybody, for participating so actively today. This was so much fun, and let's do it again tomorrow. It was really great having you, and I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I'm here every weekday morning at 9 a.m. And this is on the Enlightened World Network. And Enlightened World has wonderful, wonderful programming. Please check it out. And again, I thank you so much for the lively conversation today. It was such a delight. And Linda, it's been tremendous fun for me too. So lots of love, lots of compassion to you, and I hope to see you again soon.